Hello everyone and welcome to Sunburned. Albino ranks every weapon in Cuphead from worst to best, from pea shooter to crack shot, from charge shot to converge, etc. It's all the main weapons you use outside of the plain levels, including the DLC ones. I actually did some research for once and went out and did my own DPS damage per second tests, as well as soloing the same boss with every weapon to compare times and see how they handle different varied phases. Numbers don't mean everything, they're not the only thing I'm considering for the ranking, but they make for some useful info, so let's hurry up and get on with it, starting from worst and working our way to best. Number 9, Pea Shooter. I mean, the clue is in the name, the worst weapon in the game is the Pea Shooter, and not necessarily for its lack of damage, it's only the third or fourth weakest DPS weapon, depending on how other weapons are being used, but because the high rate of fire and narrow spread makes moving targets super annoying to hit, there's a lot of times where you're just missing 80% of your bullets trying to line up the shots while other weapons are easier to hit with. I chose Sally's stage play to test the viability of all the weapons because the first two phases are evasion checks that test your ability to deal damage while dodging a bunch of BS. The third phase is a DPS check where you just stand under her and blast up her skirt, and the fourth phase is an accuracy and elevation check when she's flying back and forth above you. So that covers 4 out of 5 bases, the fifth being the horde check, seeing how your weapon does against tangible, destructible crowds. And that's factoring into the decision making too, but I don't have footage of it. The Pea Shooter with no super or EX moves cleared Sally in 1 minute and 58 seconds, which was the second worst time of the lot of them. There were just a lot of times it was not connecting because the enemy would move in literally any fashion and dodge half the bullets. For the DPS check, I set up a live split timer on the root pack to measure how fast each weapon could kill the potato. I started it when I began shooting, not necessarily when the round started, depending on the weapon, and ended it when the thing got wrecked. RIP Potato, he donated his body for science like 14 times while I was testing different shit. I had to start and stop the timer manually, so allow like a third of a second of room for error in the values since I had to react to the dude dying every time. Anyway, the Pea Shooter killed the potato in 12.96 seconds, give or take, which isn't that bad, but again, it's not a moving target, and I never have to turn around or stop shooting the boss to dodge anything, so this is the most optimal damage you probably wouldn't get in most other fights. It's also just a lame-ass gun, like it's so boring, ew. Find something that functions and looks better. Number 8, Lobber. This pains me because I really like the Lobber. I am a Lobber apologist at heart, but it might be the most inflexible gun in the game. When it is allowed to do its thing and hit people with its slow, short-range balls, it can rack up some damage and compete with some of the better weapons, but that's such a rare occurrence. Lobber has one instance where it is better than any other weapon, and that's during Grim Matchstick's second phase with the leaping fireballs, because the boss is camped in the bottom left corner, and Lobber can actually get down there while you're platforming above him with consistent hits. Airborne enemies, forget about it. Sally's fourth phase with Lobber makes me look like a dumbass. There is a tech you can employ, which is to turn Lobber into a single-shot weapon and use your jump momentum to carry the ball upwards to its target to launch it further, and you'll get better results that way, but that's a lot of effort when you could be using a multitude of better weapons suited for the job. Lobber beat Sally in 1 minute and 49 seconds, the third slowest time next to Pea Shooter, and Sally has plenty of stationary moments to get hit by Lobber, so I don't find this to be excusable. But how good is it at murdering potatoes? With a time of 12.08 seconds, I'd say pretty good. Only 3 weapons did better, but hashtag buff Lobber. Number 7, Chaser. I know some people are wondering why this isn't the worst weapon since it does the least damage by far in any situation, but people will clown on Chaser users who are newer to the game and be like, wow bro, carried. You can't even aim bro? What a crutch. Okay, well then how can a weapon that is supposedly a crutch that carries you also be the worst weapon in the game? It don't make no sense. Chaser is good for enabling survivability and focusing your attention on getting through difficult situations. That said, don't expect any A+ or S ranks using Chaser because you'll be 45 seconds over the time limit. Chaser did okay against Sally's fourth phase, since the projectiles didn't miss, but it wasn't enough to salvage its horrendous showing everywhere else. Chaser beat Sally in 2 minutes and 12 seconds, the only weapon that went above 2 minutes, and as you can probably imagine, the potato loved how long it got to cling to life during the DPS check. 22.20 seconds before it was pushing up daisies, worst time of any gun. I did a round where I only did the uncharged charge shot hits, and even that shit was faster than Chaser. But maybe it'll keep you alive long enough to clear something you've been struggling with. Number 6, Converge. Converge. The first new DLC weapon, Converge looks neat but does not necessarily hold up to scrutiny. The base attack shoots a 3-pronged piercing bolt at your enemies, which is decent for crowd control, but the more area you cover, the less damage it does since the spread is humongous. This weapon comes with a new mechanic though, which is that if you aim it with the aim button, the spread gets smaller, and eventually you're shooting all 3 bolts super tightly against each other to do full damage at any range. But that means holding down the aim button, which means not moving, which means getting hit. You can jump left and right while holding the button, but you're glued to the ground as soon as you land, unless you let off the aim button at quick regular intervals and incorporate a whole nother finger pattern to your skill set. You can keep the spread small and move freely if you don't mind tapping the aim button like 3 or 4 times a second while you're already trying to focus on all the other aspects of not dying. This weapon has a high skill ceiling for sure, but I cleared Sally in 1 minute and 38 seconds, which puts it like 5th fastest overall, and the potato can attest to getting short-circuited in 12.32 seconds if you land every bolt every time, which isn't even a second faster than Pea Shooter. I also did a round where I didn't aim and only 2 of the bolts were hitting mostly, and that took over 18 seconds, and I feel like that's more realistic to what'll be happening a lot. So I'm not a big fan of Converge. Number 5, Twist Up. Another new DLC weapon. I actually like the idea of Twist Up. It has great damage when all the bullets are hitting, and it's amazing for shooting things above you. But if the thing isn't above you, you have to get right up in its face like Spread Shot, but even closer. This is the first time I'm going to mention an EX ability because I tested all of them and I think they are largely worthless with 2, maybe 3 exceptions, and this is one of them. Other EX weapons you'll use and you'll be like, I think I actually lost damage from wasting time doing that, but this tornado kind of feels like it does something. It hits a maximum of 5 times, spreads out in a circular motion, it's a mob clearer, and it gets a lot of hits on a boss that allows it. I used a couple tornadoes on the Onion in the root pack alongside my general shooting, and he definitely died noticeably faster. Twist Up is a power trip on Sally's 4th phase. Watching all those bullets land is like ASMR for my eyeballs, and she's dead in seconds. Overall, she died in 1 minute and 31 seconds, the 3rd fastest time. Not bad. I had to get even closer to the potato for Twist Up than I did for Spread Shot, but when I did, we clocked in at 11.72 seconds, which was actually the 2nd fastest time, and I bet you can guess what the first was. This weapon might go up in the rankings if I use it more, but Sally is pretty passive about letting you stand close enough in front of her, so I don't think these glowing results would apply to too many other places. Number 4, Spread Shot. We'll start with the potato because it's the most obvious thing. A perfectly placed Spread Shot onslaught demolishes that boy in 9.51 seconds. Obvious fastest time, GG no re, but close is a dangerous place to be, and you have to be very close to land all 4 bullets of the spread. If you're even a little further back, which is probably going to be much more common, Spread Shot where mostly just 3 of the bullets are landing gets finished in 12.48 seconds, which is much more average of a time. Spread Shot should theoretically be terrific against Sally. She lets you be close range a lot, and the 3rd phase was built for Spread Shot, but I don't even think the 4th phase lost me that much time, and Spread Shot still only beat her in 1 minute and 44 seconds, which was the 4th worst. It's still decent for crowds though, which Sally doesn't have, and blows little enemies away with ease. Don't use it for entire fights, but lots of bosses have at least one phase where Spread Shot will spread open their cheeks. Number 3, Crack Shot. The final DLC weapon, Crack Shot is basically just a buff-ass chaser, but with the ability to do even more damage when you hit with the shot before it breaks into the aimed shot. It absolutely decimates crowds with little effort, and it was a go-to for most of the DLC boss fights because it's so versatile. The only flaw I've noticed is that if the enemy is small and moving quickly, Crack Shot will just miss a bunch, depending on the angle, because it doesn't home in on enemies, it just launches itself where they were when it fired, so like it's pretty bad against Chef Saltbaker's final phase, for example. But Crack Shot beat Sally in 1 minute and 28 seconds, the 2nd fastest time, because it really keeps up with the damage as long as you're getting a lot of straight hits interspersed with the homing ones. I did 2 DPS tests for this weapon, one with only hitting the straight shots, and one with only hitting the weaker aimed shots, and the straight shots made Potato Salad in about 12.6 seconds, which is comparable to Converge's damage, or a 3-bullet spread shot, and then the purely aimed shots took about 20 seconds, or 2 seconds faster than Chaser. I think the best way to use Crack Shot is to treat it like a straight shot weapon whenever you can and hit enemies up close with it, but then just keep the fire button held down when you need to do some dodging or hanging out further away so you can tack on that extra damage. As you can see, it's still capable of killing bosses pretty fast. Its EX ability is definitely the most interesting. It summons a little planet that either explodes on contact or shoots a few bullets before disappearing. I didn't notice much of a DPS increase when using it, and I have no idea whether it's better to just explode it on bosses or let it burn all its ammo, but it's a nifty little thing. Number 2, Charge Shot. The numbers don't lie, man. I think people overrate this weapon. It has high damage sniping utility, which it excels at, but crowds will block your shots constantly, which really hurts the slowest fire rate in the game, and the fact that dashing automatically makes you fire the shot you're trying to charge is a big flaw that ruins it for bullet hell encounters. You've got the uncharged shots you can tap fire that can deal with threats immediately in front of you, but since you spend most of your time attempting to charge shots, if an enemy is rushing you down, you'll probably just end up burning a fully charged shot on them. However, in bosses where that's not a factor, there's no question that Charge Shot does great work, and even in this footage where I miss a frankly irresponsible amount of shots, Charge Shot cleans Sally's clock in 1 minute and 34 seconds, the third fastest time. But missing shots is part of the deal. The bullet doesn't travel that fast, and enemies can easily get out of the way at longer ranges. I think people will be surprised by the DPS check. A series of fully charged charge shots takes 12.54 seconds to make Potato Stew, which is only half a second faster than Pea Shooter. I'm not firing them all the exact frame they're available, but I didn't let off any shots early, and I think it was a standard performance. So Charge Shot doesn't really hold up in a sustained fire test, but it always feels like it cleans house during actual boss encounters because it's a weapon that, outside of crowd control and missing shots, doesn't compromise its damage. If you get the hit, you get the hit. There's no like, oh, I only did half damage because the spread's kinda wide. It just does what it does. Just for fun, rapid firing the uncharged shots kills the potato in 17.11 seconds, which is horrendous, so don't ever think that's better than doing charge shots. Number 1, Roundabout. I've always been a Roundabout fan, and my testing only solidified my resolve and proved it's actually better than even I thought it was. This gun has a deceptively high fire rate, and every shot does deceptively good damage. So not only do your projectiles eventually fill the screen while you're shooting them backwards for maximum range, but every hit makes a difference. Roundabout will clear a battlefield of mobs faster than just about anything, with plenty of shots left over to hit a boss, and its EX move is probably the best in the game, sending out a windy saw blade you can jump over multiple times to make it slingshot back and forth for the most effect. Roundabout wrecked Sally in 1 minute and 23 seconds, the fastest time of any weapon, and all I had to do was keep firing it. Surprising even myself, Roundabout also basically tied for second in the DPS test against the Potato along with point blank range twist up, with a time of 11.8 seconds. Don't sleep on Roundabout, man. Also, here's a chart of all the data I collected if you want to peruse it, so I'll just throw that up and you can pause it if you want. Well, that's gonna do it for this ranking. I hope you enjoyed it. Follow me on Twitter at Sunburned Albino, do an any % speedrun of watching all my other videos, and I'll see you guys next time.